everybody, thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. This presentation is going to be on the Algo 8301 voice over IP paging adapter and scheduler. It is a technical overview. Basically, this presentation will be running through the hardware, connections, the programming, giving you a taste of what the browser looks like and how you can use it, as well as it'll touch on a few of the applications, etc. that it can be used for. This technical presentation should be viewed after you've had a look at the sales presentation, so you understand how the product will be marketed by the sales team. This technical presentation is not designed to replace the manual at all. This is purely as a reference and an introduction to the product. As the product gets developed over the next year or so, you will find that certain things may become inaccurate in this presentation, so please be aware of this and always refer to your technical manual for the most up-to-date information. The 8301 is a PoE compliant device. It is designed fundamentally, or it's from its very entry point, designed to interface your SIP solution with an existing analog paging solution. So, as we are replacing more and more traditional PABXs, who perhaps were interfaced to a traditional analog paging system and an analog adapter, an analog amp with analog bullhorn speakers and speakers throughout either a school or a factory or an industry area, we are now putting in our voice over IP solutions, whether they be a cloud-based solution or a hybrid SIP PABX or a full soft switch server on board in the customer premises, where we are not looking at replacing the existing analog paging unit. The 8301 allows us to connect to the SIP solution and enable it to work with the analog paging solution. The advantage of the 8301 also allows you to grow from the existing analog paging solution and just add on the Algo paging endpoint. So for example, if we had a school that we put this 8301 and a SIP solution into, and they've got an existing analog paging system, we can still connect to that analog paging system, but as the school grows and refurbishes their buildings, puts fiber in between the buildings, that type of thing, we can now start deploying the voice over IP paging units, the 8180s, etc. End paging points, so we can do multicast paging, zone paging, that type of thing. The 8301 is designed to basically connect to pretty much most of your standard amplifiers that are out there, whether they just be a dry port inwards, whether they be a balanced or unbalanced connection, and or a relay mastered and controlled interface unit. The 8301 will manage most of these configurations. So let's have a quick look at the installation. Fundamentally, the Algo 8301 is a standalone, what we call appliance-based product. Everything that we're about to go through and talk to you about is in that small little box on the right hand side of the screen there. It is purely IP based and browser controlled for programming and management, etc. But it's an enclosed and standalone appliance. It has no moving parts. Unlike a PC based solution that is running software on a PC, which is inherently going to have problems with operating systems and or the bits that go around and round eventually wearing out in a year, about 2 or 3 years. The Algo, being an appliance, will just simply sit there and run and run and run and give years of reliable service. It can be basically mounted anywhere you wish it to be mounted. It can stand on a shelf if you so wish, or it actually comes with a bracket, which you can see on the left hand picture there, which can screw to a wall and be tucked up out of the way, out of sight, out of mind, and left to run without anything or anyone disturbing it. So generally the Algo installation will go in between your hosted or premise PBX have a connect to the Algo 8301 via a LAN, via the LAN cable, and then connect to the amplifier using a dry page port, or even using a dry contact relays. If we have a look at the interfaces on the unit, we have the network port, which is PoE powered. You must use an 802.3 AF compliant PoE switch, and with anything, when you're using a PoE switch, whether you're putting either Algo units on it, paging units, or an Algo 8301 or voice over IP phones, etc., please check the loading that you're going to be putting onto your PoE. This has nothing really to do with the Algo. I'm just giving a little bit of advice there. Not all PoE switches are created equal. Down the bottom here we've got our aux in. That's where we are putting in inputs such as music on, or not music on hold, but background music, so that the Algo will allow you to play music through into the standard analog amplifier, and or if you've got multicast and or zone paging on with voice over IP endpoints, it will also play music through there. You have an aux out output for speakers or a headset if you wish to play or have an audio output directly out of the 8301. Along the top here we've got our SIP extension registration. That's the LED SIP LED unit you see there right in the center of the box. That tells you that there is SIP registration on the Algo 8301. Now, as you get to see more and more of this, you'll understand there's 40, 50 plus SIP registrations possible on this, so it's not going to give you any individual information about it. It's just simply going to tell you that yes, I have got a SIP registration, or no, there is no SIP registration on the entire box. We have multi-cast active, whether it be steady, slave, or blink master. The input is on when programmed. Just a little warning on that one. When you program it to have an input, the input light will come on blue, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything's plugged into it, so just be warned on that trick. Don't assume. It just means you've programmed it right. And output tells you when it's active as well. Same methodology as the input. On the other side we have our line XLR mini connections for inwards and outwards. They are balanced and isolated, so just remember that for your paging connection. You have terminal block ins, balanced and isolated, and your terminal block outs isolated as well. You've got relay in and relay out. The web interface, how to program this beast. So, everything about the 8301 is programmed via its browser. Okay, after you boot up the 8301, the blue lights in the front will turn off, and the adapter would have got itself an IP address from the DHCP, if it had one. Okay. If it doesn't have one, after the boot up, the 8301 will always have, with no DHCP, its default IP will always be 192.168.1.111. Okay, but if you plug it into a network that does have a DHCP, it'll naturally go off and be assigned a DHCP, and to find out the IP address of that, you can download a Algo device locator from the Algo website, which you can see there in the presentation, giving you the website address. Once you have got the IP address, and or you have had the 8301 run up with no DHCP and it's sitting at its default, you then just put the IP address into the browser, such as Chrome, Firefox, everything except for IE9, and the browser interface should come up. Now, just a note for those who are a little bit unfamiliar with IP side, you must have, if you are going to do a direct connect to your to the Algo using its fixed IP address, please make sure that your LAN interface has been set to an IP range within the default IP range that the Algo has defaulted to, e.g. The default IP is 192.168.1.111. If you're doing a direct connect from your laptop to it, you should set your LAN port interface to 192.168.1.100, for example. Okay, so there's no conflict of IP address, but you can still talk. Okay, so now let's have a look at the programming interface. Okay, so let's have a look at the programming of an 8301 via the browser. So to get to the front page like we've got here, you need to enter the device's IP address, and you should see this. Okay, pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. If you scroll up and down, just gives you information and tells you a few bits and pieces about what to do, etc. You'll find the Algo quite helpful when it comes to explaining things as you go through. Otherwise, please refer to the manual. What I'm about to do here is simply a very basic overview. We're just going to brush over a few things, show you how the interface looks and feels, and gives you an idea of how the system is programmed. Please always refer to your technical manual when setting up things and getting to understand things about the Algo. One thing I would point out here, firmware version, very important. I'm on current release version 1.5. I upgraded this about a week or so ago. When you get your Algo, please double check what firmware version that you are running. If you need to upgrade it, you can get the firmware from our FTP or from the Algo site directly. If you are looking for support, etc., one of the first things that we will be asking you is what version software you have, and making sure that you have upgraded it to the latest and greatest software, so that we know that everything is above board and running properly. So, password to get into an Algo is Algo. It's the default, and we're in. First page we're going to be looking at here is the voice over IP settings. Okay, so here is your domain, SIP domain sitting up here. Now, you'll notice that we've got 5070 at the very end of the IP address. This is because our SIP server inside our office is using port 5070 instead of 5060. If it was just a standard 5060, I wouldn't have to put anything at the end of it, but if your port varies from anything apart from 5060, please put colon and then the port number after your IP address, and you shouldn't have any problems. We've then got ring alert mode enabled, disabled. So by default, generally your Algo 8301 is going to look like this on this page. Okay, it has simply got a page extension set up, and that is basically a SIP registration. So for example, the SIP registration is 713. If we dial 713, it will actually call the 8301, and the 8301 will answer it, and it doesn't answer it as a SIP call, as a page call, and that page will go across your analog amplifier, and or you could have it heading off to multicast Algo endpoints if you so wish. If I have this ticked here for the monitor ring, it'll give me a second SIP registration. Okay, now this can be used for when I want to have a ringing environment. So, for example, I might have PA speakers in my factory area through the analog, and or I might have them in a multicast or page zone using my Algo voice over IP paging endpoints. This would then play a ringing tone through to the area that I want to ring. So for an incoming call, for example, and associated with an extension or whatever, it will then make the phone call ring through the PA speakers. Okay, so just another little enhancement it has. So if we go on and have a look at the feature side, inbound calls, inbound ring settings, basically saying, well, what tone do you want to play on when an incoming call comes for ringing? And we can have all the different ringing tones, chimes, bells, warbles, etc. You can have a play with them when you get there, even right down to dogs barking. You can play it through your device to double check everything's working, and you can put it on loop if you so wish, if you need to go around for a walk and just double check the volumes and everything are all right, or stop it. Okay, you can change the volume settings, and you can change whether there is a ring limit, e.g. once it's ringing, is it going to ring for a certain time then stop, or just no limit, so it'll only stop when the ringing extension hangs up and the SIP line clears down. Our inbound page settings, we have got our speaker volumes here. We've got our page mode, whether it be one-way speech, two-way speech if we're using 80, 180s and delayed. We've got our page timeout options here, whether a page is after a certain amount of time. The page tone is effectively just like a bing bong type noise for the paging. You can change that to whatever you want and even put your own personally recorded ones in there if you so wish, or none. The Algo 8301 supports G722, but not all cloud servers or SIP PABXs support G722, so by default it's disabled. If your service provider and or on-site PBX solution does support G722, you can enable it, okay, but by default it's disabled. We've got automatic gain control and line out analog output level, so we can adjust the paging for line out, etc. Pretty much every page has got a little save button down here, or a save button on it somewhere. Don't forget to press that when you are programming to save whatever changes you've done, otherwise you will lose them as you flick between pages. Multicast. This is essentially paging zones. Now, let's start off just first of all with the multicast, whether it's enabled or disabled. By default it's disabled, so it's only got one number that we saw at the beginning of the programming, where it's a SIP registration in, and it just rings, or just it pages and away you go. Okay, but then we can do what we call multicasting. As soon as we're multicasting, for example, if the 8301 is the master, e.g. it has all the SIP registrations and the control of where all the pages go, you set this to a master. All your other devices you would set to a slave. Okay, and essentially you can have zones of what you want to do. Now by default, if we are sitting on basic zones, we have 6 paging zones, okay, plus music on hold, etc. Or background music playing as well. So these are 6 zones, or 6 multicast. Okay, we have also got expanded. This adds up to adds another 40 paging zones to it. So you can now have different zones for different uses, etc. On top of that, you can have SIP registrations driving each zone, or DTMF tones, which we'll talk about a little bit later and show you as we go through. So it's various zones, various uses, whatever you need to do, and set them all up. But I'd say 90% of the stuff you're putting out there will probably be sitting in basic. We then go through the multicast type. 99% of the stuff we're putting out there at the moment is just regular RTP, but if you are using a Polycom type phone solution, you have these Polycom options which are specific to Polycom phones. We have got zone selection modes. Now, how this is basically going to work is that we can have one SIP registration driving all the paging, and then a post-digit that we dial to do the paging zone. For example, if we wanted to, if we had extension 301 was our main paging, registered paging extension to the Algo 8301, we'd dial 300 1, and that would dial page zone 1. Then we dial 302, and that'd be paging zone 2, 300 3 would be paging zone 3. If you had your advanced stuff, you would go 300 300 star 10, and that would be for paging zone 10. Okay, so otherwise you could also just have it as a standard single zone, but there is another way we can set it up where we can have each zone associated with each single a single SIP registration. So each paging zone's got its own registration we can call. Okay, so again, this just heads into master sender zone settings. Well, you could read that up in the manual. So let's head into additional features. Talking about input, output, these are controlling the relays, etc. External sensors. Have a look at the manual, but essentially it enables you to trigger an announcement, for example, from an external switch, physical external switch on the Algo. We've got audio streaming enabled or disabled. That's whether the Algo is always sending out an RTP stream. An audio input port is for the music, background music, and audio streaming volume. Emergency alert. Now these are basically like lockdown messages, emergency announcements, or anything along those lines. The way they work, you can have 10 extensions registered for 10 different announcements, and then also a single registration for cancel. Now that's total of that would use a total of 11 SIP registrations. Okay, so let's give you some examples here. So we can say play the message once or play until cancelled. We're going to leave it as play as cancelled. Maximum announcement time 10 minutes. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to make 300 the cancel code. So 300, whoopsie daisy, and then the password. Okay, so what happens now is if we activate an emergency announcement, it will not stop until we dial 300, which will cancel the announcement. Now I'm going to enable announcement number 1, and I'm going to call him 301. 301 is registration, password. Okay, the announcement. So that's the SIP registration assigned to that announcement. Now what do I want it to play? So I do a drop down box here. These are all the default recordings that are in there. You've seen them before. The 8301 has got 1 GB memory on board, so you can upload your own personal announcements. So I'm just going to go tone 1 kHz, whatever at the moment. So I can have an announcement, and then I can send that announcement through, for example, paging zone number 1. Okay, I can choose any announcement, any zone I want it to send to. So now what's going to happen is I dial 301, and the first thing that's going to happen is that an announcement is going to play through zone number 1. Okay, and it will not stop until I dial 300. Now that announcement, for example, in a school situation, could be a school lockdown. And the recorded announcement, I'm just referring to an actual school that uses this, is the school actually, the recording is a series of like a siren going off, but then it's about 5 minutes of somebody talking, and what it's doing is they're basically reading out the whole procedure of a lockdown, e.g. telling them that this is a lockdown, this is what you should do, you must close the windows, you must lock the doors, the students must be taken to a centralized area in the classroom, all the blinds must be closed, they must keep down. The whole procedure just goes on and on and on. So not only is the school in lockdown, but the Algo is actually broadcasting the procedures so everybody knows what's going on and what to do. Okay, so if we wanted a second announcement, we can enable that, and this one could be 302. And again, we can assign a different announcement. This could be an emergency fire evacuation. This could be an earthquake warning. This could be or tornado warning. Could be anything that your imagination could make up, or whatever the school would need. It can be applied to schools. It can be applied to industrial areas. There's been an accident on an industrial area. Use an evacuation from an industrial area, chemical spillage, whatever. Use your imagination. Look for applications all on board. So you've basically got 10 of these that you can use. Don't forget to press save at the very end. Okay, moving on. We're now on to more page extensions. Okay, so we'll let you go into more details of this, but essentially what we've got here is that we've got all our different zones, so we can actually have our zone 1 paging, 2, zone 2 paging, 3. So these are all additional SIP registrations for the different zones paging you have. Okay, so again, you would just put a SIP registration in here, and when you dial that SIP registration number, it will actually page, and away it goes. And if you scroll down here, you can see it go through to your standard basic 6 for the music. Okay, you can even play music and use that for an announcement if you wish. All go through from zone 10, so these are your expanded ones. Again, so each paging zone can have its own SIP registration. So as explained earlier, we could use a single SIP registration with a post-digit DTMF code to access the zone, or we could have each individual paging zone assigned to its own SIP extension. So that's what this section is basically trying to work through. Don't forget the save. Okay, then we've got more ringing extensions. Now, this is on top of the original ringing extension that we had in the very front page we're looking at. So essentially what we're doing is, again, it's a SIP registration, and we're enabling it with a SIP extension. Register it up. What sort of ringing tone do you want? And what multicast zone do you want it to be in, is in regards to what paging zone. Okay, so you have now got you've got up to 10 of those additional ringing locations or ringing zones that you can actually have now. Again, I refer back to please keep track of your SIP extensions versus where they're assigned. Okay, the Algo 8301 can be the most simplest device in the world, simply an analog paging device, SIP device, making an analog paging work. But then you've got all of these options on how you can do things, and you can grow it, and it's flexible, and it's a solution in its own. So don't underestimate the opportunity for this out there. Okay, so moving on, we're going to now talk about the scheduler, one of my little favorites. Basically, this is the 8301 can have a predefined schedule of announcements, bells, whatever you want it to do. Of course, I've already said you can have up to 1 gig of recording, so you can record any announcements you want, play it any time you want, on any day you want, and assign it moving forward for any year you want. 2 sections of this. We've got the calendar here, and we've got the actual schedules. Let's start off with the schedules. So first of all is the schedule name. So this is where you can create an actual schedule. Okay, so in this case we've got term 1, term 2, term 3, etc. Okay, we can color code them. You'll see why we do that in a minute. And then to add them, we just click on this add schedule, and away we go. So I'm just going to have a look at this term 1 schedule here, and if I scroll down the page, this is what I've currently got in here at the moment. I've created these, and I can go delete event, copy event, but school bell at 8:30 in the morning, it'll ring a bell and it'll play it through page zone number 1. Then at 8:50, go to class. Class starts at 9 o'clock, class finishes at 10 o'clock, and then you can just keep adding and adding and adding as you so wish. So, and again, unlimited number of time slots. The key thing to realize that you must keep an error of margin between the time so that you don't have two announcements playing at once. It'll only play one announcement at once. Okay, so if it's a 15-second bell, I would put either a minute or 30 seconds in between it before the next event. I don't think it's going to be too big an issue for you, but just be aware of it. You can't put two events playing at the same time. So we set up a schedule. We name the schedule, then we put a whole bunch of assignments to it. It could be bells or announcements. For example, for a school situation, it could be a series of bells. For an airport, it could be a parking announcement talking about the red zone and the white zone and making sure you don't park in the wrong places. Or it could be the announcement saying don't leave your bag lying around, otherwise we'll tend to blow it up. The whole thing is that there's various set announcements that are happening in any industry. In an industrial area, or a trucking firm or something like that, it could be an announcement that is played through the speakers saying, please drivers, don't leave your vehicles idling unattended, or don't park in these zones. In a chemical area, it could be health and safety announcements, noting don't run in corridors, don't carry drums of chemical up and down stairs. I know it sounds a bit silly and I'm joking a wee bit, but in all seriousness, there's all these proactive things, and as soon as you start going to health and safety and all this sort of thing, it really starts making the impact into industry-specific areas. Okay, I digress. So we've got schedules, unlimited time slots. So what we do now is once we finish this, we hit the save up the top, and then we can go to our calendar. Now, calendar you can set as far and as long as you want. So all I have to do now is select a schedule. So I go term 1. Now term 1 starts on the 10th, 11th, 12th. Okay, and then we start off again on Monday, Tuesday, and then, oh, hang on a minute. I'm going to have a Teacher's Day on that one. I'm a teacher, I can have a Teacher's Day. Bang, now I've got a Teacher's Day. Now that could be that will be a totally separate schedule. That could be the kids finish at 12 o'clock and then they start parents-teachers meetings, say, from 3 o'clock, and you might have the bells going off at 15-minute intervals in between to make sure the parents move along so the teachers can get through the parents quickly, that type of thing. Okay, or I can go all weekdays if I so wish. I can assign here, and then I could actually adjust term 2 there for that day, a Teacher's Day. Okay, simple for the user to administer. So the end customer would say to administer, they can adjust and change it and do whatever they want. Once they're finished, they say save, and away they go. Okay, so heading into the advanced settings, we won't dwell on this too much. You've got your network settings, admin for passwords, you can have a device name, that type of thing. Your time server, very important to get this running properly, particularly if you're using scheduler. You've got your provisioning methods, option 66, etc. Your tones, these are where you upload and download your ringtones and or voice files, WAV files, for all your announcements and recording. Your advanced audio, you can read up on that, won't go into great detail on that. Your advanced SIP, where you've got outbound proxy, stun servers, etc., redundancy, and you've got your advanced multicast. Generally this can be left at default, but if you're in an enterprise environment, this is essentially just saying what IP addresses and port numbers things are going to be broadcasting across. If you are in an enterprise network, I would suggest you have a talk to the IT managers or IT person just to let them know so there's no conflict at all. And then we talk about the system. We can download configuration files, restore configuration files, reboot, firmware updates, etc. System log, we can download the system text logs if we so wish, save them and send them off. You may get answer for that if we're having some issues somewhere. Haven't had to really use it yet because they have been exceedingly reliable beasties. Firmware information, credits, etc. tells you about it and tells you about what the product is, etc., etc. Okay, that about covers it off. Now that we've looked at the program interface, just a recap on what sort of things that you can do with the 8301. It's a paging adapter, so as we can see in the illustration here, we've got the Algo paging adapter sitting up on the top of the left of the screen. We've got our music on hold source sitting there, so we can have like an MP3 player or something playing music through. We have an existing output down to the analog amplifier, and then we've got our analog amplifier speaker, so these are existing. The Algo has been driven off the PoE switch, which is then registered and connected through the hosted cloud solution or on-premise PBX, with a phone that can dial into it and to the SIP registrations and control it. We can then, in conjunction with the amplifier, the analog amplifier, or even we don't need an analog amplifier, we can then start connecting 8186 horn speakers, 8180 internal speakers, and even 8128 strobe lights to be used for paging and or emergency announcements, etc. If we have an emergency notification, we can set it up to dial, for example, 900 for a lockdown. That will then start playing an announcement through to the amplifier and or the multicast slave speakers. Again, as I indicated, we don't have to have an amplifier, an analog amplifier to use an 8180. We can use the 8180 as a scheduler and the emergency announcement as a standalone solution if we so wish. Then, once we've got the emergency notification, we can broadcast the voice through the two bullhorn and the 8180 speaker, and the 8128, which is the strobe light, can simply sit there strobing, flashing the light to give a visual indication that there is a lockdown situation running. Bell scheduling. Again, we're using the 8180, we're running through with the NTP server, and we have got a schedule set up for any situation such as a school or an industry or an emergency, or airport or trucking firm or anything like that, which basically can play anything from just the simple bell and ringing through to health and safety messages notifying staff, reminding staff of caution in dangerous workplaces, and all the way through to just reminders for the school, or even reminders in a school saying don't forget to take your homework. Again, use the imagination on how we can apply and sell the solution for your customer. We've got the scheduler, as we've been talking about, unlimited schedules, unlimited times of how you put it in. You've got up to 1 gigabyte of recording of which you can put various announcements and messages on it. You can then apply these schedules to calendars and have it all automated and all running without having to worry about it at all. Any changes that need to be done are easily done by your end customer, and or with an added value service pack with you doing it for them. Okay, so that's about it. It's just a very brief technical overview, just giving you a taste and a look-see in what it looks like inside one of these beasts. It's a very popular product at the moment. A lot of people are really beginning to figure out how to use this and put it in with extra sales to add value to sales. And from a technical perspective, it is actually a lot of fun. I enjoy working with the 8301 and the Algo equipment. It's one of the few pieces of equipment out there that it looks simple. It's actually relatively simple to get your head around, but it can actually be bent and manipulated to come out with some absolutely brilliant little solutions for the end customers. And the customers actually like them because they are pretty flexible. They add a total different dimension to how they do business and how they can particularly manage health and safety. Don't underestimate that. It's a big thing at the moment. So if, particularly in a warehousing or trucking or heavy industry or manufacturing area, health and safety messages playing at irregular intervals, just reminders to staff. That means the company's on its front foot notifying staff. But anyway, we'll just end this presentation now. Thank you very much for your time. If you've got any queries, questions, please feel free to contact us. Thank you.